Welcome to this video tutorial on creating mobile apps with React Native. In this tutorial, we will explore the basics of React Native and how it can be used to build mobile applications. React Native is a popular open source framework that allows developers to build mobile applications using JavaScript and React. It was developed by Facebook and has gained a lot of popularity among developers due to its ease of use and flexibility. One of the main advantages of using React Native is that it allows developers to build mobile applications for both iOS and Android platforms using a single codebase. This means that developers can write code once and deploy it on both platforms, saving time and effort. React Native also provides a rich set of components and API that can be used to build complex user interfaces and interact with device features such as camera, GPS, and sensors. In this tutorial, we will cover the following topics: setting up the development environment, creating a new React Native project, understanding the basic structure of a React Native application, building a simple user interface using React Native components. So, let's get started and learn how to create mobile apps with React Native. Before we start building our React Native application, we need to set up our development environment. In this segment, we will go through the steps required to set up the development environment for both iOS and Android platforms. For iOS development, we need to have a Mac with Xcode installed. Xcode is an integrated development environment IDE for macOS that contains everything we need to develop, test, and deploy iOS applications. To install Xcode, we can go to the App Store on our Mac and search for Xcode. Once we find it, we can click on the Get button to download and install it. For Android development, we need to have Android Studio installed. Android Studio is an IDE for developing Android applications and is available for Windows, macOS, and Linux. To install Android Studio, we can go to the official Android Studio website and download the appropriate version for our operating system. Once we have downloaded the installer, we can run it and follow the installation wizard to install Android Studio. After installing Xcode and Android Studio, we need to install the necessary dependencies for React Native development. We can do this by using Node Package Manager npm or yarn. To install the dependencies using npm, we can open the terminal and run the following command: npm install g React Native client. This will install the React Native command line interface globally on our system. To install the dependencies using yarn, we can run the following command: yarn global add React Native client. Once we have installed the dependencies, we are ready to create a new React Native project. Now that we have set up our development environment, we can create a new React Native project. In this segment, we will go through the steps required to create a new React Native project. To create a new React Native project, we can use the React Native command line interface CLI. We can open the terminal and run the following command: React Native init my app. This will create a new React Native project named my app in the current directory. The CLI will install all the necessary dependencies and generate the basic project structure. Once the project is created, we can navigate to the project directory and run the following command to start the development server: cd my app React Native star. This will start the development server, which will allow us to run the application on our device or emulator. To run the application on an iOS device or simulator, we can open a new terminal window and run the following command: React Native run iOS. This will build the application and run it on the iOS device or simulator. To run the application on an Android device or emulator, we can open a new terminal window and run the following command: React Native run Android. This will build the application and run it on the Android device or emulator. Once the application is running, we can make changes to the code and see the changes reflected in real time on the device or emulator. In the next segment, we will explore the basic structure of a React Native application. In this segment, we will explore the basic structure of a React Native application. Understanding the structure of a React Native application is important as it will help us to organize our code and build scalable applications. A React Native application consists of multiple components that are used to build the user interface. Components are reusable pieces of code that can be combined to build complex user interfaces. The entry point of a React Native application is the index.js file. This file is responsible for rendering the root component of the application. The root component is usually defined in a separate file and is imported into the index.js file. The root component is responsible for rendering all the other components of the application. In a React Native application, we use JSX JavaScript XML to define the user interface. JSX is a syntax extension for JavaScript that allows us to write HTML-like code in our JavaScript files. We can define our components using either functional components or class components. Functional components are simpler and easier to write, while class components provide more features and are more powerful. In a React Native application, we can use styles to define the appearance of our components. Styles are defined using JavaScript objects and can be applied to components using the style prop. React Native also provides a set of built-in components that can be used to build the user interface. These components include view, text, image, scroll view, text input, and many more. In the next segment, we will build a simple user interface using React Native components. In this final segment, we will build a simple user interface using React Native components. We will create a screen that displays a list of items and allows the user to add new items to the list. To start, we will create a new component called ItemList. This component will render a list of items and will be responsible for adding new items to the list. Import React, use state from React. Import view, text input, button, style sheet from React Native. Const item list equals. Const items, set items equals use state. Const text, set text equals use state. Const that item equals. Set items, items text, set text. Return. View style equals styles, container. Text style equals styles, title my items. Items, map item, index equals. Text key equals index style equals styles, item. Text input. Style equals styles, input. Value equals text. OnChange text equals set text. Placeholder equals enter item name. Slash. Button title equals add item unpress equals add item slash. Const styles equals style sheet, create. 1. 20. Hash of 24. Bold. 20. 18. 10. 1. Hash CCC. Below. 10. 10. Export default item list. In this component, we use the useState hook to manage the state of the component. We define two state variables, items, which is an array of items, and text, which is the text entered by the user in the input field. We also define a function called addItem, which adds the text entered by the user to the items array and clears the input field. The ItemList component renders a list of items using the map function. It also renders an input field and a button that allows the user to add new items to the list. To use the ItemList component in our application, we can import it into our root component and render it. Import React from React. Import View from React Native. Import ItemList from /ItemList. Const app equals. Return. View style equals flex. 1. Export default app. In this example, we render the ItemList component inside a view component with flex 1 style. This allows the ItemList component to take up the entire screen. And that's it. We have successfully built a simple user interface using React Native components.